I've been an artist my whole life. I did go to school and study art. I did mostly ceramics, photography, and then I got into screen printing, which is toxic, mostly. But I also sewed my own clothes when I was a kid. I was one of those weird people. I don't do it anymore because it's too expensive and I'd rather make quilts. So I always had an obsession with fabric. My mom's a weaver, so I had to help her warp the looms. And she taught me how to sew and sewed all this stuff when I was a kid. So like going through her box of old fabrics and all the old curtains and the pajamas and all that stuff probably made me sort of obsessed with the whole fabric thing. I started learning how to make quilts 1990, I think, and was quickly got out of, I don't do straight lines. I've done a mariner's compass, believe it or not. I know that's crazy. I did one. So the whole pieced quilts didn't work for me, and so I started trying to figure out how to make my art that had been screen prints into fabric. And the one that's next to Charlotte Wave, no, this little one, that's hand applique. That's crazy. Okay, and I realized there was no way I could take my images and not do like maybe one little one a year. And I hand applique pretty quickly. So I started messing around with different ways to do it. The one that's over there, that's one of the early ones where I literally cut pieces of fabric and pinned them to, and then sewed them down. I'm like, okay, this is crazy because I'm stabbing myself with pins all the time. So really my process over time has been, how can I do this quickly, easily, on a soccer field if I need to? Quite a few of these, everybody keeps asking about ball. That's a drawing from a soccer field. Both my kids played soccer, so for years I was stuck on soccer fields for hours. And so I would sit there and draw, and I honestly, a lot of people, the whole nudity thing, they're like, why do you always do naked people? I'm like, because clothes are hard to draw. That's part of it, but like clothes, when you look at somebody wearing whatever they're wearing, you make a judgment based on their clothes, and I wanted to kind of get away from that. I've been doing nudes since I was in high school and college. So to me, I mean, I have an art degree. To me, it doesn't make any sense when people go, oh my God, there's boobs on that. But they do. Yeah, well, yeah, because we have them. And it's, obviously I'm coming from a very female perspective, despite all
have boobs too.
Well, yes. I try not to draw those, but but certainly that's, to me, I kind of look at like the core of who we are. We came out naked, and then you can look more at the person and what's going on with the person in terms of that. I then started teaching probably 15 years ago. And I was teaching life science, and so some of the older ones don't have body parts inside, like they're not transparent, but you can tell that later on I got really into the hearts and the lungs and the stomachs and the intestines and all of that. And as I'm moving on, I'm not teaching life science anymore. I've started teaching chemistry and physics just because the standards have changed, and so all the recent stuff I'm doing tends to be more along the lines of, I've done some earth mothers that are covered with animals and plants and sort of protecting the environment, and then moving into climate change. Just because there's so much controversy unless you're a scientist. And as a science teacher, you know, I often have to persuade 12-year-olds whose parents have told them, no, that can't be true, that if you look at evidence, because everything's based on evidence, it is true. And so a lot of the current work I'm working on is focused on that. I do a lot of women's issues. This is one of the most recent ones. This is post-election. Oh, no, you don't. You know, I hit 50 this year, which doesn't bother me at all, but you get to this point where you're like, you look back at all the years, and I have a daughter, and I'm like, I don't want her to have to deal with some of the sexism I've seen over the years, especially being a science teacher, or even in art. I, a few years ago, joined a group called Feminist Image Group, and one of the reasons that I was looking for, first of all, my quilts, I've had people say, oh, they shouldn't be in a quilt show, because they upset people. I'm like, okay, well then where should they be? Well, they should be in a gallery or museum, except the galleries and the museums don't accept quilts. And even if you call it fiber or textile, they're like, oh no, it's a craft. I'm like, okay, seriously? So like I say, I make quilts, and people are like, oh, and they think grandma. And I'm like, I make quilts. And they're like, wait, what? That's a quilt? So I've always had a hard time figuring out where I fit in all that. And so I found a group, and we do a wide variety of painting and fabric and all of that. But here in San Diego, there's even women making nudes is an issue. Like a man can hang a nude painting, but a woman goes to hang a nude painting and it becomes an issue. So we've dealt with censorship on multiple levels. And that's not ever something I was like going out and looking for, but it seems to have been something that hits me in the head on a regular basis. Which I'm like, to me, I go home and I draw. People are always like, well, where do you get your ideas from? And I'm like, whatever's around me, don't giggle. And seriously, I see something or somebody says something or whatever, and I go, and in my head, like, I was at a panel discussion last week for the other show I'm in, and somebody had said something about not alienating men by not being the bitch. And I'm like, okay, but women get called a bitch for acting like a man, like for saying, this is what I want and this is where I'm going. And so I had this really, like 17 drawings popped in my head in like 14 seconds flat. So people are like, and the thing is, they're still there. There's like a little, bucket of them, and I can pull little pieces of them out. So people are like, well, what are you thinking about? I said, I don't know. I sat down and I liked the whole bathtub thing. Frida Kahlo did a really awesome bathtub painting if you haven't seen it. But the one I saw first was George Bush's. And his bathtub painting is pretty cool. You should go look at it. And I saw it, I'm like, George Bush painted? He paints? And he does, he paints. And then I went and started looking up all these other bathtub paintings, and then I was like, the bathtub to me is this place of relaxation. Like, the kids are running around screaming, you go in the bath, you close the door, you've got your glass of wine, your book, whatever it is, and it's like the water somehow makes everything better. I currently don't have a good bathtub in my house, but I dream of them, obviously. And so, I also do sort of more Earth Mothery type pieces, and sometimes they're angry. Somebody that came in yesterday goes, she's really angry, and I'm like, she's really calm actually, and she's asleep. So, yeah, sometimes they're angry, sometimes they're sad, sometimes they're frustrated. Those are all the normal emotions that we all feel. So I'm coming at it from very much, this is a wide range of pieces from, I think, 99 through the two most current ones here. And so I'm just going to keep going. Obviously, I'm heading more into I don't know that it's more political. I've always sort of been on that realm. With what's going on, I'm trying to still protect what being a woman is, and also looking at the politics, the environment, and climate and stuff like that. So I've got 4 drawings in process at the moment. One's turning into a quilt pretty much as we speak. So that's me.
Thank you.